I want to bring in the trial attorney, Misty Marris, who's here in New York with me, and also bring in our NewsNation senior national correspondent, Brian Enton. Brian's in Philadelphia today, University of Pennsylvania, where this guy went to school. You know, Brian, you've covered a lot of these trials. I know you were saying before a couple things that you didn't, usually they don't fight extradition. He did. And to Alex's point, you don't usually see people that are in these situations interrupting the judge. He's done it twice, or interrupting the proceedings. So what do you make of it?
Yeah, I was surprised, Connell, to hear that he's fighting extradition. It's also just so shocking when you look at that video and him yelling out as he was going into the courtroom and turning to the reporters, and there's those still images. You see the anger in his face. What's so surprising to me is I've spent the last day since the arrest talking to his friends, people who he went to school with here at Penn, people he went to high school with, people he lived with in Hawaii. Everyone says he was a calm, collected, polite, very, very intelligent young man. And it's just very, very baffling to think about what happened in his life, what changed, because everyone we've talked to said he had no violent outbursts. This is all totally, totally out of character for him.
Whether it was the back surgery people are talking about or something else. I mean, I'm going to get back to that in a moment. I'll do some legalities here, go through the legal issues with Misty for a few minutes, Brian, and then we'll come back to what you were talking about, because I do think that's interesting and important. Misty, what about the charges? A couple things. Let me go through this in order. Let me start in Pennsylvania. One more clip from the DA down there, because as Alex was getting into this, what takes precedent, they have their own charges and the like. So let's listen to the DA for a moment. It's another clip.
The Blair County charges are still active. We intend on prosecuting them, but we also intend on cooperating with the New York City Police Department and the Manhattan DA's office. We've already indicated to them that we believe their charges take precedent, and we'll do what's necessary to accommodate their prosecution first. But that doesn't mean we're getting rid of our charges.
Right. The gun charges, the forgery charges, second-degree murder here. Is that all the way it was explained makes sense to you, or?
Yeah, absolutely. That there's going to be precedent given to these murder charges. And keep in mind, when we saw extradition challenge today, which Brian was right, we don't always see that. But in this case, I wasn't surprised, because the severity of the Pennsylvania charges are just less than what he's facing in New York. The highest level charge, the felony charge, is possession of a gun without a license. Now, that carries significant sentence, can carry 10+ years, but it's different than a murder charge, which is obviously something that's going to prevent bail from being granted, and is certainly a more serious level charge. So he's fighting extradition, and it's a defense delay tactic. It's giving the defense time to maybe challenge the probable cause of the New York case.
Now, to talk about the case in New York, second-degree murder charges is what is been filed, right? So I think some people watching say, well, why not first-degree murder, which you think of as being premeditated, you plan it out and that kind of thing, but it's different state to state, right? And doesn't New York has some special circumstances and the like? Explain why it's not first.
Correct. So first-degree murder in New York statutorily is a felony murder, or it's murdering a police officer. It's very specific what falls under that statute. So a typical murder case that you might see brought as first-degree in another state is actually a second-degree murder charge in New York.
He can still go away for the rest of his life. Just the minimums are lower, though.
The minimums are lower, so there's the possibility of parole in some cases, but it still could be a lifetime sentence.
Okay, so it's different from New York. So that's the issue. It's not like Alvin Bragg is not going, strong on this or anything like that.
No,
it's the way the law
is written in New York.
Let's get back to this guy. Brian brought up some really interesting points there about his background. So let's talk about that for a moment. Let me first play a clip from Cuomo last night. Chris had on, a friend of his, I think, that lived with him out in Hawaii. He was in some communal living facility out there that he was living in, maybe working remotely, whatever it was. And this issue of what, if something went wrong with his back, and he had back issues and back surgery. But anyway, let's listen to that clip. We can come back and talk about that.
He talked about being excited to meeting new people, getting healthy again, because he mentioned he had a back. I don't know if it was an injury or pre-existing, and that he was doing everything he could to, not be in pain. He was just always a kind person, great listener, somebody that, you would enjoy having a cup of coffee with. And I just can't imagine that this is the same person.
Yeah. So what have you found out in talking to people about if anything, about these health issues he supposedly had?
Yeah, the people we've talked to in Hawaii, Chris, say similar things to what that man, his roommate, say, that he had this back surgery. And it's interesting, on his social media, on one of the profiles, he had a picture that showed he had screws into his back they put screws in during the surgery, and that he was in pain. There was one friend we spoke to, excuse me, in Hawaii, who said that he went surfing one time and then had to stay in bed for a week because he was in so much pain. And many of the friends say that he had sort of just dropped off at the face of the earth over the last couple of months. There's social media messages, people reaching out to him saying, hey, Luigi, where have you been? Why haven't you responded to me? In fact, his mom reportedly, and this is new, reportedly put in a missing persons report for him on November 18th in San Francisco, which would have been 2 weeks before the shooting, Connell.
Right. So they knew something was up, and it was missing. That brings up another legal question, Misty. I think I know the answer to this, but a lot of people might have thought right away that the mom or somebody else, they see the picture. You know, she, as to Brian's point, looks like she'd reported him missing, that they should have been obligated to say something, but apparently that's not the case either.
Right, Connell, actually, this was something I was grappling with right from the beginning. When we have a picture of his face relatively clear.
Somebody must have known in the family.
Right, now you find there's so many people that had connections with him, family and friends. Why didn't anyone come forward? Why was it somebody who just recognized him at this McDonald's? Well, there's no legal affirmative obligation to come forward and identify someone. In fact, that's why you always see these rewards to incentivize people to come forward. So unless somebody...
It's a wealthy family, though, and that kind of thing, so I don't know what that may have played into this, you know, in terms of whether they would be incentivized by rewards or not. That right. But nobody said anything. Nobody that knew him or nobody went to school with him.
No, but there's no legal obligation. It's so weird, right?
Where is there a legal obligation? Obviously, you can't harbor someone, right? You can't put them up at your house.
Correct.
If you know about it. Or...
If you are involved, or not the person actually does the crime, if you're involved in the planning, commission, or cover-up, you can be charged as an accomplice to a crime, and you can be charged with the same level crime as the individual who pulled the trigger. So if someone's involved in harboring a fugitive, helping them get away, helping them along the way, helping secure fake documents, whatever it is, there's the possibility of criminal charges. But merely seeing the picture, knowing who the individual is, and failing to step forward is not criminal.
It's frustrating for the public when they hear that, say, you know, there's a difference between criminal and whether you should have said something or not. I don't know, maybe people don't judge if it's your family, but a friend, high school, somebody like that. Brian, but we don't know that anybody, and you know, it's interesting because some people may not have seen him in a long time. That's the other thing I was thinking about, because he had fallen off the grid, and even before that he's living out west or he's living in Hawaii. I wonder if some of those high school friends were like, well, maybe, but maybe not.
Listen, the high school friends that we've spoken to didn't put two and two together. I don't even think this was on their radar. You have to remember who this kid was. Again, valedictorian, got his master's in education here at Penn, Ivy League, was in a special fraternity for the top people in the top of his class, was totally nonviolent, we're told, was like a best friend to so many, was the leader of a book club in Hawaii. I mean, this is the last person you would expect. We do the stories, Connell, it's always the lone wolf gunman dressed in black in a bedroom by himself, depressed. This is like the opposite of that. So I think for his friends and family, perhaps this wasn't even something they would have even considered, so that it didn't even pop into their mind.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. You know, we have one of the top officials in the New York City Police Department standing by here in our studio, so I'm going to pause with you guys for now, and we'll get to that. We'll squeeze a break in. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Misty. And we also...